Hi, and welcome to Across the Desk. Well, this week something kind of unusual for Oklahoma happened, and that's the Oklahoma Supreme Court has decided that there are certain cases where abortion should be legal. So the Supreme Court here in Oklahoma came out with a decision saying that in the case of saving the mother's life, abortion is legal in Oklahoma. And this is a good thing in a lot of different ways. It's clarifying language because there have been a lot of different bills go through the Oklahoma legislature and signed by our wackadoodle governor on abortion, and just so extreme and draconian laws when it comes to abortion. A doctor, so if they do an abortion in Oklahoma, can be fined up to $1,000 and spend a year in jail. That's something else. And a procedure that was legal just not that long ago. This is the chaos that has been created by the U.S. Supreme Court in how they handle their decisions. And really, abortion isn't the only area that the U.S. Supreme Court has really muddied up everything. But this is about the Oklahoma Supreme Court. Because here they come. Oklahoma with some of the most draconian and extreme laws on abortion that you can find. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court says, in the case of saving the mother's life, abortion is legal. That's all they said. Now, it's gotten quite a reaction from Republicans. Now, Democrats, of course, they're happy for this. Hey, look, this clarifies some very vague language in some of these bills that are going through. And it's a benchmark to say, hey, if the mother is in danger, then you can have an abortion. Now, that sounds like a lot of people should be on board with that. And I would assume so. I would assume most people in Oklahoma would want to save the life of the mother and terminate the pregnancy if they had to, if it had to be done, to save the life of the mother. Most people would be for that. Most people would. But there are some out there who aren't. And some of them that are out there that aren't are in our legislature. Now, how do they get in there? Well, you got people like Nathan Dahm, who his district's gerrymandered. It's 5 Democrats to 8 Republicans. A Democrat's never going to win in there. So the most crazy and extreme of them just gets to walk in without a challenger every time. So that's how we get these most extreme people in there, like Jim Olson, who I was talking about last week. Big time theocrat. He has won every race so far because he's never pulled a challenger. Again, because of gerrymandering. And you just can't pull a challenger. It costs a lot of money to run a house race in Oklahoma, between 20 and 30 grand. You're going to need that much to run a race with all the printing and the mailings and everything else you have to do. That's a lot of money to raise. And when you have other races that are more attractive, better horses, so to speak, in the race, that's where the money will go. So the person in these districts that are highly gerrymandered, well, they won't have any money to run on and quickly have to shut down their campaigns because they have no money. And then the Republican who is running, like Jim Olson or Nathan Dahm, just gets to walk right into a seat. And that's how it works here. That's how come nearly 70 seats of our legislature are uncontestable. We can't get a Democrat to run in them because of the gerrymandering's been so bad. That's why we have the perverted representation we have in the state of Oklahoma. But back to this Supreme Court decision, because this is really interesting. So the Supreme Court's actually saying in certain cases in Oklahoma, abortion is legal. This really puts a foot in the door in some respects. Because now we can define what is it that determines when a woman's life is in danger from her pregnancy. So that's something that can be talked about. The other thing was, you had people like I was saying, Nathan Dahm, who came out with this. And they gave a platform to one of the news stations here. Of course, they're fairly conservative, so they want to give those guys a platform, I'm sure. So they give people like Nathan Dahm a platform to say how, hey, we want to investigate this and everything else, these activist judges. And that wasn't actually Nathan Dahm. Nathan Dahm said, well, we do want to go through these bills and clarify some languages. He didn't think it was necessary for the Supreme Court to do their third branch job, which is, a check and balance. They don't want that. So they're some of them are a little upset and some of them aren't. Senate Pro Tem came out and said that he was shocked of the ruling, and we'll have to look it over before he gives an opinion. Now, Charles McCall, the Speaker of the House, he thought that this was probably a good thing. It gave him a sense of direction, so to speak. But the most telling thing was our Governor Stitt. Governor Stitt put out a press release on this, and it was scathing. Tells that the Supreme Court in Oklahoma were as activist judges is what they are. They're activists, and they're not they're voted in. You vote for Supreme Court justices. So I don't know where he's going with this, but he was saying they're all activists and they're being all political and nothing law, but that's really not true. They looked at the law in this and everything else. And really, it's the opposite. It's Stitt who's taking this and making it a political football. He's the one who's making it political by saying the Supreme Court's being political, because they didn't decide how he politically feels. You see how Stitt politically feels. They didn't decide that way. So he's really upset about this, stomping his feet and crying like a baby about it. Now, he really is, more than anybody else. You should see the statement he put out. He goes off and calls them activists twice. He uses a term, activist judges, and he uses it again, these activist people and stuff. And it was like, man, did somebody give this to you on a card? Are you smart enough to come up with your own stuff? Because what's written, and there's a deal on it from Channel 9 right here, and where he just kind of goes off like a crybaby about the decision made by the Supreme Court of Oklahoma, because they didn't decide the way Stitt feels they decided, and he's an autocrat like that. He thinks he should have all the power, and that's how Stitt feels about things. So I thought that was really telling about this, was how Stitt wants to, investigate these justices for not ruling on something the way he thought they should, and which is telling. It's so telling of Kevin Stitt's conservative values, because here he is thinking that, it's appalling to him that we should terminate a pregnancy to save the life of a woman. That's where Kevin Stitt is on this. We should allow the mother to die in order for that kid to survive. And really, it's not really that kid, because really Kevin Stitt couldn't care any less about that kid. What he cares about is his political prestige. So to him, this is a hill he's got to stand and defend and fight and die on if he must. Women must die for his political ambitions, because that's how he is, and that's the rut he stuck himself in. It's highly extreme, way conservative, total extremist, total extremism, total authoritarian. This is so much of a guy who can't seem to get enough power. And so here he is going after a third branch of government that didn't decide the way he thought they should. And he wants to stone them. He wants to run them through. He wants to ride these guys out. He wants to do something to get rid of them. And he talks about it right in the News 9 article that he gave him the statement, saying about how these activist judges are just, everything's short of calling them un-American and not Oklahomans, pretty much is what he did. And I don't know that he maybe totally didn't understand. Maybe he didn't understand, hey, this is to save a woman's life. Is this really where your values are? I don't get this. I think this is pretty gross when your values say, the mother has to die if the pregnancy isn't viable. That doesn't make any sense. If the baby's going to die, like your water breaks too soon, which we have heard has happened, this is one of the big things that come up every time during the debates. It breaks too early, the kid gets it starts festering and getting infected and causing sepsis. And then the baby's not viable anymore. It's not going to survive. And the mother won't either if the pregnancy isn't terminated. Neither one's going to survive. But you know what? To someone like Kevin Stitt, that doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is that his political will is seen through. And it's kind of gross on its face. It's very, I don't know. It's a totally extreme position to take. But getting off of Kevin Stitt, because I probably talked about that enough, this is really a good thing that the Supreme Court seems to be a bit of a ballast here between an extreme GOP legislature that's been gerrymandered so badly and a very extreme, conservative, authoritarian, highly big government conservative administration with Kevin Stitt, where he just needs all the power. And he is so corrupt. There's so many things we've talked about over the years about his corruptions, about missing money, and about cronyism and manipulating people and all for power and their jobs and their money and everything else for Stitt's power and control. That's what this is all about. That's what probably his whole statement is about when he's going off in the Supreme Court. Because honestly, it slips a little bit of his power out when the Supreme Court goes against him like this. So, but it's what they do. They're a check. They're a check on everything. That's what they're there for. So here we have big news here in Oklahoma. The Supreme Court in Oklahoma has found that in order to save the life of the mother, abortion is legal. Now, that's not a huge step. Still illegal in a lot of different ways. OBGYN can be arrested and go to jail for a year, I suppose, and be fined $1,000 for performing one. And I guess in other cases they even want to make that even worse if they can get those passed. And you know, radical, conservative, extremist Kevin Stitt will sign them. And that's where we are at this week in Oklahoma. This is Across the Desk. And we will see you next week.